Welcome back to Impact Analysis. Each week we break down a real-time event leaders need to understand, not just what's happening, but what to do about it. My name is Jerome Ryan, and I'm joined by my co-host, Mike Janko. Mike, what's our topic for today?
It's great to join you again for Impact Analysis, Jerome. We're both million airline milers, as are many of the leaders who's going to benefit from our discussion today. And with the recent concerns for frequent business and personal travelers, we're going to focus on addressing a critical hospitality scenario. What to do when there's violence or the government warns of potential issues near your hotel or resort.
Yeah, and we've seen a couple of recent examples of this with the cartel action in Mexico just a week or two ago, and more recently with the military action occurring across the Middle East and even some of the hotels in the Gulf Coast countries being hit with some of the missiles and the debris coming down.
Many times the resorts are not the direct targets, but your proximity can trigger cancellations, evacuations, orders to shelter in place, and just general instability. So really the question is simple. When unrest erupts nearby, what should leaders do? Now, historically, cartel retaliation, bombings, riots, and similar events often include explosions, highway blockades, vehicles burning, closing routes, armed clashes with security forces, airport disruptions, lockdowns, and curfews. The most recent aggressive actions and retaliations caused disruptions lasting between a day to a week or more, with basically any kind of movement causing a shutdown.
Yeah, and Mike, with this recent violence, again, I'm looking, really right now at Mexico, and I'm looking at countries in the Gulf region. It's going to cause a cascading effect of travelers just shying away from that area. We certainly have individuals, vacationers, business travelers that are stuck in some of those regions right now, but those that are looking forward to spring break is coming up. Here in the United States, a lot of the college students are looking at maybe going down to one of the sunny resorts in Mexico. And I have to assume that those students and the parents behind those students are probably having some serious second thoughts around sending their children down to Mexico. Even if the threat has passed, the lingering knowledge or memory of what happened is probably going to impact the tourism industry for a period of time going forward.
That's for sure, Jerome. So let's take a look at the financial impacts. For a resort, operating at 80 to 90% occupancy, that translates to immediate revenue impact. And I don't know about you, whether it's spring break or not, but everywhere I seem to travel, it's always 80 to 90% booked. So think about this, a 300-room resort with an average daily rate of $400 and 85% occupancy generates about well over $100,000 in room revenue alone. If you add to that food and beverage, spas, excursions, the revenue can easily reach about $200,000. So a 3-day disruption could expose between, let's say, $400,000 to $600,000 in gross revenues.
Yeah, and that leads directly into lost revenue, as you've explained, and potentially insurance claims being filed against that lost revenue.
Why don't we take a look at some of the top operational exposure layers, Jerome? I'll turn it over to you for that.
Thanks, Mike. So I think, when we look at some of the operational exposure levels here, first and foremost, I look at guest safety and the guest perception of the risk of what's happening. I think guests are becoming a bit more savvy around asking questions for the safety that they can expect while they're at the resort, especially in some of these places that traditionally have had some danger elements when you step outside the resort. So again, looking at guest safety is number one. The next one that I would want to look at is transportation disruption risk. So again, think of this as the resort, the hotel is completely fine, but there is a disruption in being able to get your guests from the airport to the hotel. Maybe it's food deliveries, maybe it's other supply chain issues that impact the way the resort is handled and operated in a daily basis. Third, I'd look at workforce stability risk. And I think we have to remember that the workers at these resorts and hotels are oftentimes impacted by the same disaster, the same threat as the guests. So you have to assume that those workers, or at least a portion of them, are going to be prioritizing, rightly so, their family and their friends' safety and concerns first. So it's really important that you understand, one, you're going to have less workforce, a temporary shortage, if you will, but you can also look at that as proactively, what can you as a company do to make advanced preparations to ensure those employees, those key employees at least, have a comfort that their families are being taken care of and that they can dedicate some portion of their time to work. The next, number 4, is supply chain interruption. I talked a little bit about that around transportation disruption, but when you look at that supply chain disruption, think of not necessarily the spa services and maybe the pool cleaning, things that could be paused during a severe event, but food, water, those are the basic necessities, security for your company. All those supply chain disruptions could impact sort of the basic elements of safety that you really have as a resort or a hotel, your fiduciary responsibility to protect those guests. And then number 5, I'd say reputational amplification. And this is just something that we live in the age of TikTok videos and instant dissemination of information. So any of those reports that are coming out from your property of not being able to handle the basic necessities of the guests could further damage your reputation going forward. So, Mike, with that, maybe we talk a little bit about the immediate actions, when these warnings are issued. So I'm going to turn it over to you for that.
I think what you just mentioned with taking care of your associates is so important. Every time there's an event, you hear a corporation say our associates or our employees are our number one asset. If you can really execute on that and they have comfort that their family's being taken care of, they're going to put a little bit more energy into supporting you. So I think that is really critical. Now, when it's war or retaliation may be obvious, the real question is the scope of impact. If not, if it's something that could be potentially occurring, first step is to verify the official sources. Look at the details through your national security agencies, reference law enforcement, embassy advisories. Avoid acting solely on social media. We know that many times you hear something in social media, the immediate next step you should take is validate it with another one. Step 2 is activate your crisis team. Security, operations, human resources, communications, and leadership should all get together immediately. And if they can't do it in place, to do it virtually. Activate that team. Third step is secure access, increase visibility. Make sure that you have visible security presence. It reassures your guests. Look at your perimeter controls and access screening procedures. Make sure you have good control over your own property. And the fourth step is communicate internally first. Employees should hear directly from leadership before they see the headlines. Work in advance with your communications and legal teams to have a message ready to go. Make sure it's cleared and get the message out quickly. Establish credibility.
I agree, Mike. When it comes to messaging, you're right, internal messaging first, but all the other messaging, including external messaging, needs to be aligned. You don't want to be telling different stories to different stakeholders. It should have an alignment. And that messaging should be basic around things like what is confirmed, what are the areas that are affected, what areas are not, what can be expected from a work or an amenity availability, who to contact with concerns. So really keep it simple to the facts. What you know, don't speculate, and allow ability to follow up later if you have additional information.
Great points, Jerome. So let's talk about what to tell guests next. Guest communication should be calm, factual, and be more proactive. You're talking to guests. You want to reassure them. You want to minimize legitimate concerns. Avoid speculation as well.
When you're crafting those messages as a property or resort owner, you are looking to instill a sense of calm and authority that you have a handle on the situation. So you want to make sure, to the extent that you're able to confirm this, that the property remains secure, right? First and foremost, safety. Give updates on transportation if you know it. Give clear contact points for questions. Some of the guests are going to have unique needs. They may have medical needs. They have medicine that may run out after a certain period of time. They may need electricity for certain, medical devices that they've brought on the trip with them. So you want to make sure that you have clear contact points that you can follow up to make sure that they are taken care of. And assurance of coordination with authorities. Let the guests know that you're in contact with the appropriate local authorities, so you're getting information on a regular, ongoing cadence to ensure that the situation doesn't worsen. And then when the situation does get better, you can share that good news with the guests at the hotel property that the threat has passed, the airports are open, flights are resuming. So with that, Mike, I think I'm going to segue into strategic preparedness before the crisis. And this is not necessarily before the crisis. I'm going to start off here with an example of what good looks like in the moment. With the ongoing military action in the Gulf region, I thought it was amazing that the government of the United Arab Emirates came out with a government decree. I believe it was from the tourism agency, but it came out from the government nonetheless, instructing all the hotels to continue to provide the services to the guests that they have in their resort or hotel. The government has said if their reservation time period has expired and they're looking to move out because their vacation or their business trip has ended, but they're not able to because of the flight disruption, extend that hotel room for them, provide 3 meals a day for them. The government has said, we will cover it. I think that's an amazing approach where the government has come in to provide some sense of reasonableness and sanity, for those travelers. That's one less thing they have to worry about with the missiles flying over their head right now. At least they're not going to be kicked out of their hotel. At least they're going to have 3 nice meals a day, and they're going to be taken care of throughout the duration of the incident. So I think that's just an amazing thing that the United Arab Emirates did. In addition to that, looking at pre-incident readiness, leaders should start to look at alternate transportation routes, supply chain continuity plans, emergency notification systems, make sure they're tested, insurance coverage. We're talking a lot today about man-made threats, whether it was the cartel or the military action in the Gulf region. But a lot of times, the threats that impact a lot of the Caribbean hotels, at least, can be weather-related, and we can see them coming. And so when you have that advance notice that something may be impacting you, like a hurricane, contact your insurance company. Make sure you understand, what's covered, what they may need up front from you or for documentation purposes to help expedite a claim.
To add to the recent event there, Jerome, with the UAE, I heard that there were over 20,000 people who benefited by that within the first day or so. And in addition to them, Dubai and Qatar, they took action where the government partnered with resorts and they pledged to help. So all the travelers felt secured. Now, I also heard that the US, they contacted people in a dozen countries presently, as of the taping of this segment, that are affected by this weekend's event. And in many of them, the US told their citizens just to find a way home. So that could mean for some people to charter flights. For others, it's just going to be shelter in place because they continue to look for new ways to get home and the flights are canceled, they don't have contacts, et cetera. So I think the point you brought up resonates, that if these actions are taken in advance, it's not only goodwill, it's going to ensure that your reputation is maintained and these people are going to come back to your resort. So additionally, as you said, non-war related, for hurricanes, for other type of natural events, take a look at force majeure language in your contract. Contact law enforcement in advance. Make sure you know your external partners, what steps they're going to take, how you can rely on them. And then conduct an annual crisis simulation exercise with your team. We've talked previously about the value of exercises, tabletops, et cetera. When you have an opportunity to walk your teams through advanced planning and scenarios, the reaction is going to be a lot better when they actually need to implement them. So organizations that rehearse these response scenarios, the statistic is 30 to 50% faster response than those reacting in real time.
Thanks for that, Mike. Why don't we segue now into the takeaways in the closing, and let's leave our listeners with a couple thoughts here. I'm going to go first. I think government warnings near your resort are operational events, even if violence occurs off the property.
Many of these short-term disruptions are going to expose hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue and long-term brand trust as well.
Yes, and preparation reduces panic. It reduces noise as well, right? You get to cut through that. You have clear communications. That communication can actually help reduce the amount of cancellations you may face. If guests have a clear understanding of what they can expect, they may have the comfort to continue with their trip if it's safe to do so.
Also, consider how crisis leadership is not about predicting a violence, it's about managing its response. So, as we say in our weekly impact analysis, you can manage risks now or consequences later. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.